HBF is coming. High bandwidth flash. The next memory layer in AI infrastructure. Hynix and SanDisk are already standardizing it. Applied Materials and Lam Research are already building the equipment for it. KLA, Teradyne, Amkor, Entegris, onto innovation, all sitting in the supply chain that makes it possible. Most investors have not heard these names in the same sentence as HBF. That is the point. Today we go through them one by one. What each company does. Why HBF puts them directly in this trade. Let's go. Quick recap before the stocks. HBM high bandwidth memory is the fast, expensive memory stacked directly next to every AI GPU. It is why NVIDIA's chips can run AI models at scale. The problem: HBM maxes out at around 64 gigabytes per module. The largest AI models today require over 5 terabytes of memory per session. That gap is a system architecture problem, not a performance tweak. HBF takes NAND flash, the same technology in your phone, and solid-state drive, and stacks it the same way HBM stacks DRAM. The result: 512 gigabytes per module, 8 times more capacity than high-bandwidth memory 4, more than 200 times faster than a standard solid-state drive, at lower cost than HBM. Hynix simulated HBM plus HBF together on NVIDIA Blackwell GPU. Workloads that previously needed 32 GPUs ran on just 2. First samples second half of 2026. First commercial AI inference devices early 2027. HBF market $1 billion in 2027, $12 billion by 2030. AI is no longer compute limited. It is memory limited. HBF is the industry's answer. These are the companies building it. Hynix is the world's largest HBM supplier. 62% of the global HBM market. Roughly 70% of NVIDIA's high-bandwidth memory 4 supply for the Vera Rubin platform. Entire 2026 HBM production sold out. Why HBF Hynix co-signed the standardization agreement with SanDisk to jointly develop HBF through the Open Compute project. Their HBF product line is called AI&B. Mass production target 2027. The thesis in one line: they supply HBM today. They are building HBF for tomorrow. One company. Both layers. Same data center customers. SanDisk is a pure-play NAND flash company. Spun out of Western Digital in 2024, NAND flash is the core material inside HBF. It is their entire business. Why HBF SanDisk is the company that proposed the HBF standard. They signed the development agreement with Hynix. They are targeting first HBF memory samples in the second half of 2026. Current numbers: second quarter 2026 revenue up 61% year over year. Gross margins from 29.9% to 51.1% in a single quarter. Third quarter guidance: $4.4 to $4.8 billion with margins of 65 to 67%. Entire 2026 NAND supply reportedly sold out. The thesis in one line: the only pure-play NAND company with a direct seat at the HBF standardization table. Every HBF stack uses the technology SanDisk has been developing for decades. Micron makes HBM, DRAM, and NAND the 3 critical memory types in AI infrastructure. The only US-listed company with full coverage across all 3. Why HBF Micron has not yet made the same public moves as SanDisk and Hynix on HBF standardization, but they have the HBM manufacturing expertise and the NAND production capability. When the HBF standard expands beyond the initial 2 partners, Micron is the logical next entrant. Current numbers: second quarter 2026 revenue of $23.86 billion, up 196% year over year. Gross margins at a company record of 74.9%. Earnings per share of $12.20 against a $9 estimate. Entire 2026 HBM capacity sold out. The thesis in one line: the broadest AI memory stack exposure among US-listed names. HBM now. HBF optionality on top. Samsung is the world's largest memory company by total revenue. DRAM, NAND, and HBM at scale no other company matches. Why HBF Samsung has reportedly begun early concept design work on their own HBF products. Their approach is broader than Hynix. They are treating HBF as part of a full restructuring of the AI memory and storage architecture. On high bandwidth memory 4, they have now entered mass production after qualification challenges in 2025. If they close the gap with Hynix, they could capture up to 35% of NVIDIA's high bandwidth memory 4 supply by end of 2026. The thesis in one line: when HBF moves to mass production, nobody can ramp NAND volume faster than Samsung. Kioxia is Japan's largest NAND flash manufacturer. One of a handful of companies globally with the manufacturing scale to produce the high layer count NAND dies that HBF requires. Why HBF stacks require hundreds of NAND layers built at extreme precision. Only 4 or 5 companies worldwide can build NAND at that density and volume. Kioxia is one of them. Any HBF production ramp at industrial scale will need Kioxia-level NAND output. The thesis in one line, not a direct standardization player yet, but a critical raw material supplier. When HBF scales, Kioxia's fab capacity becomes a gating factor. This is the layer most investors never reach. HBM took the equipment and materials companies with it when it ran. Every one of the following companies is already in the HBM supply chain. HBF uses the same process architecture. When HBF scales, these companies scale with it. Applied Materials makes the semiconductor manufacturing equipment used to build advanced chips deposition systems, etching tools, hybrid bonding machinery, advanced packaging equipment. Why HBF uses the same stacking architecture as HBM through silicon vias, 3D packaging, hybrid bonding. Applied Materials holds over 50% market share in HBM packaging process equipment. Every HBF fab will require the same class of tools Applied already sells. Current numbers, semiconductor equipment business growing more than 20% in calendar 2026. HBM-related equipment revenue targeted at $2 to $3 billion annually by 2027. Second quarter 2026 revenue guidance, $7.65 billion. The thesis in one line, they built dominant market share in HBM packaging equipment. HBF uses the same process. The same tools apply. Lam Research makes the etching and deposition equipment used in high-volume memory manufacturing. 34% of total revenue comes from memory equipment. Why HBF is built from 3D NAND. Every new NAND fab that Samsung, Kioxia, or SanDisk builds for HBF production will run Lam Research equipment through the etch and deposition steps. You cannot build 3D NAND stacks without etch and deposition tools. Lam is the dominant supplier of both for memory manufacturing. Current numbers, Lam has forward visibility into approximately $40 billion in NAND conversion spending over the next several years. Stock more than doubled in 2025. Memory spending expected to remain robust in 2026. The thesis in one line, HBF is a NAND story. Lam is the NAND equipment story. KLA makes the wafer inspection and process control systems that semiconductor fabs use to find defects and manage yield. Why HBF stacks hundreds of NAND layers using through silicon vias. The more layers, the more complex the structure, and the more expensive a defect becomes. KLA's inspection tools catch those defects before they become yield losses. Their chief executive has explicitly called HBM a major new driver of memory process control intensity. HBF, which is structurally more complex than HBM, will be the same. Current numbers, advanced packaging systems revenue hit $950 million in calendar 2020, up 70% year over year. Full year 2025 revenue was a record $12.745 billion. Gross margins of 62.6%. The thesis in one line, as memory structures get more complex, inspection intensity goes up. KLA holds over 50% market share in process control. More complex HBF means more indispensable KLA. Teradyne makes the automated test equipment that qualifies every semiconductor device before it ships. Why HBF? Every HBF module will require rigorous testing before it goes into an AI server. Teradyne's Magnum 7H platform already supports high bandwidth memory 3E, high bandwidth memory 4, high bandwidth memory 4E, and high bandwidth memory 5. The multi-generational platform architecture extends directly to high bandwidth flash testing. Current numbers, DRAM test revenue from $80 million in 2021 to $350 million in 2025. Fourth quarter 2025 AI-driven revenue was over 60% of total. Full year 2026 earnings per share growth expected at approximately 50%. First quarter 2026 guidance was 24 to 34% above Wall Street consensus. The thesis in one line, you cannot ship a memory product without testing it. Teradyne has the dominant platform for high bandwidth memory testing, and it is already built for the next 3 generations. Amkor is the world's largest U.S. headquartered outsourced semiconductor assembly and test provider. They physically assemble and package finished chips into the modules that go into actual products. Why HBF requires advanced packaging, the same 2.5D and 3D stacking architectures that HBM uses. Amkor is one of the few companies globally with the scale and technology to assemble HBF modules at volume. Every memory stack HBM or HBF has to be physically put together before it ships. Amkor is the factory at the end of the memory supply chain. Current numbers $2.5 to $3 billion in CapEx committed for 2026, nearly triple prior years. Advanced products now over 80% of total revenue. Fourth quarter 2025 revenue was $1.89 billion, beating estimates. Building a $7 billion semiconductor packaging campus in Arizona. The thesis in one line: when HBF moves from samples to mass production, the assembly work goes through companies like Amkor. Scale and geography: U.S. headquartered matters increasingly in a supply chain that is being restructured. Entegris makes the ultra-high purity materials, specialty chemicals, and process solutions that semiconductor fabs need to maintain yield at advanced nodes. Why HBF? HBF requires hundreds of precisely deposited NAND layers. At that level of complexity, contamination destroys yield. Entegris supplies the purification systems, chemical mechanical polishing consumables, and deposition materials that keep those processes clean. They already have specific wins in HBM contamination control. Their isopropyl alcohol purifiers solve yield problems in HBM stacks. The same chemistry applies to HBF. Current numbers: over 60% of Entegris revenue comes from advanced logic and advanced memory. NAND layer count moving from 250 to 300 layers. Every layer transition increases the materials content per wafer that Entegris sells. Fourth quarter 2025 revenue was $824 million. Management guided for meaningful volume uplift from HBM and next-generation NAND in 2026. The thesis in one line: more layers in the stack means more deposition steps, more cleaning steps, more purification. Entegris sells into every one of those steps. Onto innovation makes optical metrology and inspection systems the measurement tools that verify whether semiconductor structures were built to specification. Why HBF? 3D NAND stacking: the core process behind HBF requires measuring high aspect ratio structures that standard optical tools cannot see. Onto's aspect system is designed specifically for inline monitoring of 3D NAND stacks. It uses infrared optical methods to profile the interior geometry of stack structures at production speed. When HBF moves from lab samples to production volumes, every fab running HBF will need these metrology tools at each layer. Current position: smaller than KLA Corporation or Applied Materials, which means less analyst coverage and less crowded positioning. Directly specialized in the measurement problem that defines HBF manufacturing. The thesis in one line: HBF stacks cannot be built without measuring them layer by layer. Onto builds the specialized tools for exactly this structure. Every company on this list carries the same underlying risk. Memory is cyclical. SK Hynix is investing $15.1 billion in new capacity. Micron is spending $20 billion. Samsung is ramping production 50%. When that supply comes online, prices compress, margins compress, equipment orders slow. The HBF specific risk: first samples in 2026, first commercial devices in 2027, meaningful revenue probably 2029 or 2030. The companies on the HBF side of this list are priced on a future that has not arrived yet. And the macro risk: if Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta pull back on AI capital expenditure, the memory trade slows with it. Here is the full map. NVIDIA builds the chip. HBM makes the chip work today. HBF is the next memory layer: more capacity, lower cost, built for AI inference at scale. Direct plays on HBF: SK Hynix, SanDisk, Micron, Samsung, Kioxia. Equipment inside every HBF fab: Applied Materials, Lam Research, Huawei, Teradyne. Assembly materials measurement: Amkor, Entegris. Onto innovation. Most investors bought the GPU. Some bought the memory. The supply chain underneath equipment, materials, packaging, that part is still early. HBM is the present trade. HBF is forming. If this breakdown was useful, hit like it genuinely helps the channel. Drop any stocks or topics you want covered next in the comments. I read them all. Subscribe and hit the bell. The next video covers whether the AI memory supercycle has already peaked or whether there is more room to run. You don't want to miss that one. See you there. This is market commentary and historical data analysis only, not a buy or sell recommendation. All investment decisions are your own responsibility.